So the sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Yes, it's time for the bonus scoop session that we do on Tuesdays with Darren Doogie Wolfson, Channel 5 Eyewitness News. Also, of course, the Scoop podcast right here on SKOR North. Zolgad, Doogie, and executive producer Declan Goff. And Darren, let's start here. The Vikings. What can you tell me about the anticipation of a Kevin O'Connell press conference to introduce him finally at TCO as the Vikings' new head coach?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good late morning. Hope you two both had wonderful Valentine's days. Judd, I still anticipate a news conference to take place. The initial plan all along was at some point this week. Now, we had to see if the Rams ultimately won the Super Bowl. They did. When the parade would be. Now we know the parade will be tomorrow. So, based on the Vikings' initial planning, okay, let him attend the parade, soak up the win, then come here. So, we're looking at Thursday, I guess maybe Friday. I guess if they wanted to, they could push it out until next Monday. But, that's been the initial plan all along. Judd, I can tell you there are multiple assistant coaches who have agreed to contracts to join Kevin O'Connell's staff that still fully anticipate coming here to Minnesota. So I know it's unbelievable fodder right now. Some prominent websites, including Pro Football Talk, have run with it, just opining, wondering, could Sean McVay walk away? Could Kevin O'Connell be the next Rams head coach? Yep. I'm just telling you, Judd, I don't foresee this being a Josh McDaniels type situation with the Colts many years ago. Until I hear otherwise, I fully expect Kevin O'Connell to be the next Vikings head coach.
Take me through what we know right now, because it's come out in bits and pieces about what you brought up, which is Kevin O'Connell's coaching staff. Who do we know is in, and what do we know about what this staff is going to look like?
Well, I brought up, I guess at this point, 10 or 11 days ago, 2 Scoop podcasts ago, Wade Phillips' son, Wes Phillips, who was the passing game coordinator / tight ends coach with the LA Rams, that I fully expected him to have some sort of prominent role with the Vikings. Those signs point to him being the offensive coordinator here. Many of the other names are out there. Aaron Wilson, who used to cover the NFL for the Houston Chronicle way back when for the Baltimore Sun. He's very tight end. I know he's done a good job of pushing some names forward. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN as well. The other prominent name would be Ed Donatel, that he agreed to a contract last week. I know one of his attorneys was looking over the wording, but all signs point to Ed Donatel being the Vikings defensive coordinator. One interesting nugget I heard last week, Judd, was because I know there are Andre Patterson fans at TCO Performance Center. I was told there was never actually a conversation about Andre staying on staff. I fully expected that to happen. I'm told, all things considered, Andre did not want to go join the New York Giants, but he did not have a choice. He wanted to stay here, but he was not given that opportunity. So that definitely surprised me. I thought just based on how many fans there are of Andre Patterson and Egan, that they would find a pathway to keeping him on the staff. But just those conversations never took place. Keenan McCardle as wide receivers coach, zero surprise. Justin Jefferson, face of the franchise, what he wants, you grant. He wanted Keenan McCardle back, so I'm not surprised by that.
Interesting stuff. So to go down that path, tell me this then. So JJ wants McCardle back. McCardle stays.
So does Thielen.
Yeah, but my point is this. Danielle Hunter loves Patterson, correct? Saw him as his guy.
Oh, yeah.
To explore that space, do we expect fallout from a guy who has basically barely played in the last 2 years, who when he does play is fantastic, is still, I think, deemed a star? Could the first real issue that Kwesi faces at TCO be some blowback from Danielle, especially with the fact that he is due that lump payment in March, which I know can be smoothed out, but my guess is there could be some contractual shenanigans there. Do we need to keep an eye on the possibility of that whole thing, for lack of a better term, imploding?
Well, interesting you bring that up. I know you guys brought that up on Purple Daily at some point last week. Until we have some finality on that front, we need to continue to talk about that situation. I think it's more the contract, not necessarily Andre, but make no mistake, Danielle, incredibly close with Andre. He had more back and forth over the last couple years with some of the issues going on with Andre than anyone else. So that just tells you how close those two are. What is the cap hit right now, Judd? Because something needs to happen. You know the numbers better than I do, but something needs to happen. It'll happen pretty quick here. Like this time next month, as we talk on March 15th or whatever that Tuesday is of that week, like we'll know what's going on Danielle because he's due that money here pretty quick. 5 days, or is it less than 5 days into the new NFL calendar year?
Yeah, I think it's the 5th day.
Yeah, and what is it? I mean, is the cap hit 26.1 million?
I'm looking it
up
right now.
Talking on a line on that, the cap hit is ridiculously high. So we know something needs to occur on the Hunter contract. I am curious what the exact numbers are. I should know top of my head.
26.1 is correct.
Yeah,
for 22.
Well, we know he can't be on the team with a $26.1 million cap hit. So we know something needs to happen with the contract. I'm still working on what exactly will happen because you're right. And he's what, 27, 28? I mean, he's still in the prime of his career, even with the recent injury history.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a lot to like there. He's in phenomenal shape. We know that. So he can bounce back from injury, even though we're talking some serious, plural, injuries, right? Or at least a history of injuries, maybe one particular injury, that's very worrisome with what the neck. But like we know when he's on the field, like, is there any debate, Judd? Top 10 pass rusher? Do you even put him in the top 7, top 6, top 5? I mean, he's in that conversation for sure.
Correct.
And like, you're not going to do any better than him anytime real soon. But like we know, 26-1 is not workable. So something needs to happen on the contract. I'm not convinced he'll be here in 2022. How about that?
So I believe it was your guy, former agent, if I'm not mistaken, Joel Corey, did a sit down with somebody after the contract was reworked last June, and basically explained that the big cap hit that he would, or the big bonus that he would get on the 5th day of the league year, actually can be smoothed out by spreading it through years on a restructure. I guess the question was that contract done with that in mind, or was it the contract done in June to make Danielle happy at that time with a plan that it would need to be torn up completely again now if he was to stay? The second part that's not being discussed, and look, I think that 4-3, 3-4, 2-8, I don't care. He's going to be good. But in the prime of his career, does he want to play in a 3-4 defense? Flat out in his prime, when there was talk, Dukes, way back when, about Frazier possibly going to a 3-4, we asked Jared Allen about that back then. And Jared at that time said, no way, I'm a 4-3 guy. So like there are definite talking points here and answers we don't have when it comes to that contract. And just as importantly, Hunter's use that are going to have to be addressed internally with him. Because if he says, look, I am a 4-3 guy, you're playing a 3-4, it could get to a situation where it becomes untenable.
Yeah, I mean, it could. Now, how often did they go hybrid last year? More specifically, when Danielle was healthy. I mean, it's not like they were always in 4-3. I get it. 4-3 has been the base. It was the base.
The base, though, right.
But there were some
but the
hybrid
philosophies are different.
Even going back multiple years. But yeah, the philosophies are different. I don't have that answer, Judd. Yeah,
no,
I don't have every
either.
answer. I'm curious. I just know this much. I don't think enough people are talking about that situation. There's such a fixation, and I get it, on the quarterback position.
Yes,
in the last 24 hours, more so on, will Kevin O'Connell even be the Vikings coach? Is there a chance that blows up? Really, outside of you guys, there really isn't anybody talking about the Danielle Hunter situation, and I do think it deserves a big spotlight. I really do.
Agreed completely. And I saw that our friend Tom Pelissero reported, I think on Sunday, that Mike Pettin is expected to join the staff as a yet to be determined defensive assistant. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, him and Kevin share the same representation, so I'm not
Okay.
surprised one bit on that. We see that all the time. Whether we should or not, we can debate that, but we see it all the time. Look at the new GM in Chicago, who many people wanted to be the GM here, Ryan Poles. He hired a guy that has the same representation as him. I can point to any number of other recent examples. It's just the way it is. Now, I'm fine with that. Like, I get it. He has failed miserably at times, but just as somebody that Kevin can lean on for advice, who's been a head coach before, like I'm not bothered by him coming in as a defensive assistant. Yeah, if he was calling the defensive plays, yeah, I get it. There could be some concern there, but I think Ed Donatell's a pretty good hire, all things considered, in that regard. I'm fine with Mike Pettin joining the staff. So yeah, that is absolutely the plan. The former Browns head coach to be an assistant here.
Wolves scoops. Pat Bev, as you've been saying for quite some time, got done, huh?
It did get done, yeah. So the Wolves, there really wasn't, I don't think, like this realistic scenario where the Wolves were going to have cap space this summer, but this contract extension, 1 year, $13 million, pretty much puts an end to any scenario where the Wolves would have had cap space come July. So the Wolves chose Beverley over, any logical free agent that they could have landed. I think that's a pretty good choice for them to maintain their flexibility 2 years out where they can have cap space is a win. But if you're Beverley, his representation, you look at it and say, okay, $13 million, that's a good amount of money for one season. And so I think both sides can claim victory, but certainly the Wolves not guaranteeing any money 2 years out, a definite win with the injury history too. So you look at cap space 2 years out, you look at injury history, Bev's age, like there was no reason. I said all along, I thought, a happy medium would have been, there's no way you could fully guarantee 2 years out. I thought you could have made it some sort of partial guarantee. Then if next year goes wrong, gotten out from underneath the contract. The Wolves just said, you know what, forget even, that scenario at all. Let's just do this 1 year, but we'll go with a little bit of an overpay because I would not have guessed 13. I would have come in a little bit lower than that. So the happy medium is we'll go a little bit more here for next year because we're not going to be a cap team, cap space team anyway. We'll give you your money. You've had a solid impact. I always knew both sides wanted to get something done. I've been saying that for a while. That's why I always foresaw this happening. Wasn't necessarily sure it would happen on February 14th, but the talks have been going on for a bit. And so I'm not overly surprised that it ultimately got done. But yeah, the Wolves are very happy, and certainly Bev is very happy with this move.
Dukes, did those talks start with the Bev camp saying that it had to be 2 years, or was that not a mandate at the start of the discussions?
Well, I mean, that's always the negotiation, right, Judd? I mean, if you're Kevin Bradbury, Patrick Beverley's agent, of course you're fighting for a guarantee beyond 1 year. But when you come to the realization you're just not going to win that part of the negotiation, you look at, okay, for the 22-23 season, what's the best way for me to maximize my client's earning potential? And you find, that number, 13 million, right? Like that's above the mid-level, so if Bev had hit the market, so that's the other way to look at it. If you're Kevin Bradbury, if Beverley had hit the market early July, what contract would he have gotten? Not many teams are cap space, by the way. So he would have gotten at best the mid-level. That's not 13 million. Now, could he have gotten 2 years? Potentially. But then if you're Bradbury, you could say, you know what? The trajectory this franchise is on, it's going in the right direction. Keep Bev there. He'll keep making this big-time impact. He'll earn another contract anyway. I'll bet on my client. My client will bet on himself that he'll have a good year, 22-23, and we'll do this again next year. So that's another way to look at it. They say, you know what? Even with the injury history, his impact on the court, off the court, we'll find a way to have him here for more than next season.
I love this too, Dukes, because of this. So Pat Bev in that room and on the floor is incredibly valuable to this team. But his contract will expire as Ant is going into year 4, I believe. And at some point in time, I think Ant is going to be the heartbeat completely of this team. He is in some ways now, but it's a little bit early to put that, hey, you've got a lead two on him. I could see after next season, though, definitely a transition to Ant is the guy now. Like, he is the leader. He is the guy who brings the passion. And so I think it syncs up nicely where if Pat Bev does leave at that time, it's not going to be the hit to the room that it would be if he hadn't come back next season.
Fair. We'll also see a transformation. Like, this roster is still incomplete. Yes. I had a lengthy discussion with Sachin Gupta, the Wolves executive VP of operations, on Friday. That's on the most recent Scoop podcast. Later in the conversation, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but my question was along the lines of, Sachin, do you have your core three in place with D'Lo, Ant, Cat? Do you feel like for the foreseeable future, you've got your main core in place? Not to take away from, Jaden McDaniels taking another step up, others, but that those three are your core three, your big three that you will build around. So Would you like to extend D'Angelo Russell this summer? That's when he's extension eligible. You could not, for example, extend D'Angelo Russell right this second. You have to wait a little bit. So I said, is that the plan? Do you want to extend D'Angelo Russell? I thought Sachin's answer to me was pretty interesting. He tap danced slightly. It was essentially, we'll wait and see. We'll see how it unfolds. We'll see if we can come to some sort of agreement. That wasn't, hey, yes, I've got my big three. I plan on building around these three. That goes back, Judd, to, the trade deadline when I said there were two guys the Wolves weren't trading. Edwards, Towns. D'Angelo Russell has always been on the table. He deserves praise for the year he's had. I wish he could stay on the floor for, every game. He's missed too many games for my liking. That's what it is. I don't think that's necessarily going to change moving forward. But when he's been on the court, he's been excellent. But I'm telling you, he's never been untouchable. A lot of fans don't want to hear that. Even when they hear it, they still don't want to believe it, but it's the truth. He's not untouchable. The Wolves would move Russell if the right deal presented itself. That's the issue. Like, who's trading for D'Angelo Russell? Even as good as he's been, it's not like there's a bunch of teams knocking down Gupta's door saying, trade me D'Angelo Russell.
That's it. So do you think if you had to put a percentage on D'Angelo Russell being here in 2 years, what would that percentage be?
I mean, the fact that Gupta on the record, it just doubles down on what I've heard, on background.
Right.
I don't put a strong percentage on that. But then the other question, the other part of this, Judd, is it's the elephant in the room. Is Gupta for sure the final decision maker?
I was going to ask you that question.
I asked him about that. It was another one of those, we'll see. Clearly, Mark Lowry, Alex Rodriguez are going to have a say in the new president of operations because whenever they take control, majority control, you're going to give this president of operations a multi-year deal. So if it's December of 23, the plan right now, or if they try to speed up that timeline, I wouldn't be shocked if behind the scenes they are trying to speed up that timeline, but they still have to get their finances in order to some extent. But if they could speed up the timeline, if Glenn is open-minded to speeding up the timeline.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, not sure he is.
Glenn might not want to do this now.
Yeah, I don't think he's open-minded to that. But right now the plan is December of 2023. So let's just go on that premise, even though I'm telling you it's worth watching. It bears watching, that situation. But that's another talker for a different day. Well, okay, the executive in charge, the president of operations, is going to sign a multi-year deal. So if you're going to pay that individual 7 figures, which you are going to do, it's a question of how healthy of a 7-figure number are you going to pay. Then Mark and Alex are going to have a say in that process. So I wonder how it's going to unfold. I've been saying I think Gupta's here. I do, but his contract is expiring. They could just decide to part ways, go after Elton Brand. That's been the hot name for a while, but it could be a few other names, Landry Fields. Maybe there's some others, but, the Elton Brand team has been out there. I think there's legitimacy to the Elton Brand team. Number 2 guy in Philly was the number 1 before they brought in Daryl Morey. So, yeah, I'll continue to keep an eye on that situation. But if, let's say Gupta's not here, Brand is, or somebody else is, then that might change my answer. But if Gupta's in charge, I'm not sure I'd go like this big number, like, 60 or 70%. I'd go significantly less than that.
How do we fairly judge Gupta?
Well, I mean, I think this Beverley move is a good move to maintain the flexibility 2 years out. He signed a few guys to 10-day deals. They'll keep an eye on the buyout market. Issue is, based on the luxury tax, they can't add a guy right this second. If they wanted to sign a guy this morning for the rest of the season, have that player for tonight's game, for tomorrow night's game, then it's the All-Star break. But if you wanted to sign a guy today and have him in uniform tonight, because the Wolves do have an open roster spot, they sign a guy for the rest of the season. Now, they could still do some gymnastics potentially later on, but you're past the trade deadline of, giving away a Jake Layman, attach a second-round pick, create cap space that way. So trade deadline dead. Like, you're not signing – I guess what I'm getting at, Judd, you're not signing a guy right now because it's going to put you over the luxury tax. So you need to wait. But then the issue is a guy is not playoff eligible if he signs after it's either March 1st or March 2nd. And so I got to find out what the exact day is where the Wolves can sign a guy, prorated, minimum salary for the rest of the year, where they still stay below the luxury tax. Right now, they are $870,000, give or take a few $1,000s under that luxury tax. So they don't want to go above that. Trust me. They're not going above it.
That.
Yeah. I mean, the luxury tax, that pie of money, I mean, that is going to be in the neighborhood of $10 million per team that isn't over the tax. Glenn Taylor is not signing, Willie Cauley-Stein or Moses Brown or Enos Freeman today to sacrifice $10 million. It's just not happening. But Sachin said they'll be on the lookout. I do know that the agents for some of these players are being proactive, looking at the Wolves saying, okay, that is the worst team in the league, defensive rebounding percentage. So my big man client, who now is on the market because he got let go, I need to call the Wolves to see if they have any interest. So Moses Brown's camp has reached out to the Wolves. Willie Cauley-Stein's camp has had a conversation with the Wolves, but nothing is happening, for at least a couple weeks. But can I see them adding somebody in March to at least help them for the rest of the regular season, even if the guy isn't playoff eligible? Sure, I could see a scenario like that. So we can grade a move like that. But you're right. He came close at the trade deadline to acquiring Montrezl Harrell. I was told at one point the Wolves thought it was just about done. Then Charlotte, swooped in and, Washington decided to take the offer from Charlotte instead of doing a deal with the Wolves. But even if he had acquired Montrezl Harrell, would that have been enough to fairly judge him? Let's say the Wolves complete that deal. Then Montrezl Harrell right now is a Wolf. So, okay, so he signs Greg Monroe, a couple other guys to 10-day deals during the COVID outbreak. You trade for Montrezl Harrell. And
I'm just saying it's hard to do
maybe, do something else. Although if they add Harrell, I guess, you probably, although they would have probably sent a contract out. So they still would have had a roster opening in all likelihood. So you add a guy in March. But really, how are you judging that? But I think the Bev move is good. I really do. A little bit of an overpay for next year, but then maintaining the flexibility 2 years out. But was that a really hard move to execute? Probably not. So I don't know. It's a good question. How do you?
I'm just trying to deduct how you say this is our guy when he's done a fine job of keeping the status quo, but Gerson built this team and it's turned out to be good. And Chris Finch, has there been more about a contract extension there?
I see it happening.
A couple months ago.
I'll leave it at that, Judd. I fully expect it to happen. Yeah, I think it'll happen before next season. I can't tell you if it'll be June, July, September, October, sooner, but yeah, before next season, I see it happening. I do.
He's up when?
I was told he was in lockstep with Rosas. I need to verify that there's a team option, but I think they would rip up that team option.
Sure.
Then extend him. If there's not a team option, you extend him. But I need to figure out for sure on the team option. I had heard there was a team option, but I wasn't able to verify that, so I need to continue to work on that angle.
Baseball question. I've got a question that didn't occur to me at the time, but now it does. And the Twins and probably some other clubs did this. The Twins put some guys on their 40-man last fall who are nice young players.
Mm-hmm.
We all saw the lockout coming. Like, it's not a surprise. Oh my God, there's a lockout. We've Dukes going back a year talked about this potential. Why didn't they leave some of those young guys off the 40-man? Because if they had, they could play for the Saints. I guess I'm confused as to why you basically are locking out guys. And I'm not implying like Max Kepler, okay? So I'm saying, but there are some prospects that were put on that roster who could have fairly easily been left off unless there was a Rule 5 concern. But I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to why you wouldn't want a couple of those kids possibly playing in April in St. Paul when I don't see any way on God's green earth that they're going to be playing in April in the big leagues and basically now are locked out.
So you're talking about specifically Jose Miranda.
Yes, I
Royce Lewis, and is the proper pronunciation Josh Winder? Is it Winder, not
We've
Winder?
gone back and forth. I forget now.
I should know.
I'm not going to pretend that I know. I forget.
I'm tempted to say it's Winder. And anybody else? Was it?
Miranda was the main one that I thought of.
Yeah,
came to mind.
He was Rule 5 eligible the year previous, right? And he wasn't selected. Was he Rule 5 eligible then again?
That's possible. And if that
I'd have to look all this up. I get what you're saying. So, like Derek and Thad and Rob and all those guys, they've got deep knowledge of this, right? Like, because if Miranda was exposed, 100% he gets taken.
Yeah,
so you weren't going to outright just lose Jose Miranda.
Yeah.
So I would imagine like they know that, right? Like,
right.
We can call those guys a lot of things if we want to. I don't think stupid's one of them. I really don't.
Yeah.
And so
no, I'm not.
It has to be. It's a good question, right? Because it's a weird situation for a lot of these guys. It really is, right?
Yes.
Like if you're Jose Miranda, how weird is it? It's got to be really weird.
And you're locked out now, and you're screwed. You can't do anything. I mean, go work out by yourself, but you can't work with a team now.
You can't. Now, did you see the loophole that one of the ESPN announcers tweeted on Monday about how guys can go play anywhere in the world? That there is a loophole where you can go play in Mexico. You can go play.
Australia?
Now, I don't know if you're willing to do that, put your body on the line. Could you imagine? It might have been
hurt.
Rojas. See one of the announcers, analysts for ESPN, Enrique Rojas. Does that name ring a bell?
That's very possible. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would have to go reference the tweet, it's hard to foresee guys doing that. Why would you risk your body? Plus, with COVID and traveling out of the country and all that, there's still weirdness there. So, not sure I see many guys doing that. Although there are some guys maybe in their home countries right now that might consider such a thing if this thing is going to continue to drag on. But yeah, you feel horrible for guys like Miranda. Think about Royce Lewis. How he can use the at-bats.
When's the last time he played a baseball game?
Yeah, before the lockout hit, the extended spring or whatever they do at the end of the season, right before the lockout, he got in a couple games, some action. When was that? Sometime in November. Whatever they do there in November in Fort Myers. But yeah, and Royce in the past has spent time working out with Torrey Hunter. I was texting with Torrey a couple weeks ago about Ortiz getting into the Hall. I've been meaning to catch up with Torrey, so I'll find out if he's working with Royce again. But yeah, like how do these guys, now maybe some of these agencies can come up with, finding a way to get some scrimmages going just so these guys can get some action. But then if you're pitchers, how much do you really want to be throwing in a live game that doesn't count? When there's always a chance, like it's odd. But Judd, I mean, you saw this going back a long time.
Oh, it's going to be
a lot of people didn't want to believe it, but
it's as bad or worse.
December 1st. Heck, Judd, I remember you saying it like July 1st. You said it middle of the season last year.
Yeah.
I had said for a while that going back to 2016 when they came up with, the current CBA that then expired on December 1st, that a lot of people had, earmarked December 1st of 2021, that there was going to be a lockout, that it would be ugly. But like you were saying in the summer, your vibe was this thing is going to last a while. And at this point, I don't see the finish line. I really don't.
Manfred was hired for this. Like, this is why he's there.
Mm-hmm.
He's there to win this. So, all right, sir. We will talk to you Thursday, Doogie. Thank you.
Okay. See you, boys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.